Gentlemen, let's get right to it here. Here we go.
Here we go, a little something like this. Hit it.
If you're looking for the Friday Five, you've definitely come to the right place because it's definitely Friday, and I've definitely got 5 bodies taking up space. I've got Bill Stubblefield, he's an admiral, and Mike Carl, he's no bum. I've got John Doyle in for Schultz, and John Gilstrap, who wrote Zero Sum. And please take note that Gilstrap is here in the substitution slot, and Mike Height, who was killed off in Zero Sum, is not. In the book, I don't know how Height dies. In fact, no idea what leads to his demise. I know Height is suspiciously absent, and an investigation would be a good start. Is this absence just a coincidence, or a case of life imitating art?
Don't look at me.
And last but not least, out in Georgia, sitting on his throne, I've got Joseph Joey Torch Ferretti joining in by phone. Joe, good morning once again.
Good morning.
Speaking of space, nobody takes up more than the governor of this state. And what a week he's had, all over payments that are still late. You know, it's one thing to have health insurance you can't afford, no matter how badly the company you have is scored. You pay those premiums and you wish there was a ref, because the next year when you get those increases, your first reaction is, what the F? But at least you have the health insurance for which you pay, unlike the employees of the Greenbrier whose premiums just made their money go away. No lie, these folks paid $2.4 million for the Greenbrier health insurance premiums, but it never got to the insurance companies, which caused lots of Greenbrier health insurance screamiums. The governor's company was collecting the money, but that's as far as it went. And at this time, nobody's certain just where that money was spent. But they better find some soon, I'd say. Another $1.2 million is due this Tuesday. And just when it looked like the Greenbrier was going on the auction block, the governor got a reprieve when an agreement with Beltway Capital stopped the clock. Yes, all of these financial issues have put the governor into a financial thicket. And the only way out I see is to get lucky on a Mega Millions ticket. Jackpot $534 million at your nearest retailer.
And that won't even cover all his debts.
It may not. We kid because we love. Joseph, you are up first in the Friday Five.
Rob, a slight correction. I am in Pocahontas County this morning, where they say as we climb the mountaintops down here, you're just a little bit closer to heaven. Rob, you ask us to submit topics every week for the show, and we're supposed to submit 3. I have routinely included one about our esteemed governor now for the past few months, and I've never touched upon that. I've always gone another direction. But I feel compelled this week to talk about our governor and to question for the panel and for really all West Virginians, how much of this nonsense can we tolerate? I don't begrudge anybody that has financial difficulties. In fact, it's been cited that one of the endearing aspects of our governor is that, boy, he's like the rest of us. Even though he's a billionaire, he has financial difficulties. He has trouble making ends meet. And, boy, can't we all relate to that? That's great. And I don't want to focus on the fact that he owes hundreds of millions of dollars to creditors over loans that he has taken out over the years. But what I really question, and I wonder how deep this goes, is the fact that he has done some things that, frankly, in our history of this country, other governors have been impeached for. And we've had governors impeached in this country. I researched this. Back to the late 1800s, there's been 8 who've been run out of office for various financial misdeeds, graft, and what have you. But in this particular case, this is a governor who, at the very beginning when he ran for the office, claimed he was going to put his businesses in a blind trust. Never happened. I don't know where our ethics commission is on this, but it just never happened. He said that he was going to run the state just like he runs his businesses. Well, he has actually stolen money from this state. Failure to remit sales taxes. As we know, when you run businesses, you collect a sales tax for the West Virginia. That money is never yours. That is supposed to go to the state every month. He has failed to do that to the tune of millions of dollars. And this has been going on for months. He took money from his employees' paychecks at the Greenbrier, money that was supposed to go to a health insurance company for the health insurance plan for those employees. It never made it there. Where is that money? It was taken from paychecks. That's a violation of federal law, state law. By the way, the failure to remit sales tax money is a felony in the state of West Virginia. He has debts that he has not paid for mine safety violations. Now, again, he's short on cash, can't pay the violation. But, this has to do with mine safety, where his mines have been cited by the Mine Safety Health Administration for the failure to follow the safety rules that govern all mines in this country. Mike Stewart, who is a supporter and said he was going to vote for Governor Justice for the U.S. Senate seat, come out just recently, actually yesterday, and said, where's the Ethics Commission been on this guy? He promised he was going to live at the seat of government in Charleston and has never done it. He still lives in Lewisburg, where he coaches the high school girls team. $10 million diverted out of COVID relief money for a baseball field at the University of Marshall University. I could go on and on with this. But the issue is, how much here in West Virginia are we going to tolerate with this guy? And at some point, do we consider him to be disqualified from getting our vote? That's my question.
All right, let me begin first with the biggest backer of the governor at this table, Mr. Michael Carr.
If that's true, he's in trouble. Big trouble. I've been long acquaintance of Joe Manchin, from when he was in college, and stayed in touch and everything. But absolutely, and Bill's heard this, the biggest mistake that Joe Manchin ever made was enabling Justice to get nominated and elected as governor as a Democrat, in West Virginia, without a doubt. And I'm going to vote no for U.S. Senate because of it.
Interesting. Mr. Stumblefield.
Yeah. Joe, you went through a litany of what he has not paid. One, I think you left out, maybe I did not hear it, was $2.2 million in delinquent property tax, which goes to mostly to the schools. You add that to the health care. There's a pretty egregious impact that Justice not paying his bills is going to have. The curious thing, though, is there going to be any political penalty for what he's done? There is a very capable candidate running against him, the mayor of the Wheeling area, Glenn Elliott, very well qualified. If we did not have political labels on our candidates, I think Elliott would be someone everybody would seriously consider, especially in light with what Justice done. We do have political labels, and I think our label is sufficiently strong at this point in time. My sense is that Justice is going to cruise to election as U.S. Senate without any difficulty whatsoever, and I'm not sure that he is a candidate that we will take great pride in.
Mr. Gilstrap.
Your summation question was, how much will West Virginians tolerate? Well, the answer is apparently quite a lot. Big Jim is Teflon in West Virginia, so a lot of the details apparently don't matter. I mean, breaking it down, and I don't know the ins and outs specifically, but I think one could argue specifically. I'm cherry picking the ones that I took notes here. He is not his mine companies. The mine companies are corporations, and the corporations themselves isn't it called a fictitious person? A corporation there's a term of art that
now Mitt Romney says corporations are people.
Well, they are, but the reason you form a corporation is to form a fictitious entity, which means that it's not Jim Justice. It's the company that is in default. It's not Jim Justice that's in default. And you can do this over and over and over again with all of these different entities that are in default. So it's really not Jim that is in default.
There's personal liability on sales tax as an example.
Okay, well there you go.
Permeates the corporate.
The sales tax is the one I think is his biggest liability. He swore to God and everything yesterday that he's going to pay the health insurance that he's already paid or whatever it is, and he pulled out the Greenbrier payment through negotiation yesterday. I think that there's some combination of electioneering and there's some lawfare, there's some opportunism, there's some leveraging through embarrassment to get things working here. I don't know what the ins and outs of the legality are, but I'm going to go back to, is this going to affect his election? No, I don't think it's going to affect it at all because we do have political labels and he's the R.
John Doyle, do you disagree at all?
I agree with everything Joe Ferretti said. I have, and I'll get back to this in a minute, I have an additional problem with Jim Justice, and that is I served for 4 years in the House of Delegates during the time that he's been governor. He would never show up. And basically, legislative leadership had to make a lot of the decisions that the governor is supposed to make. We're supposed to, under West Virginia's Constitution, have a full-time governor and a part-time legislature. And he figured he could turn it around. And being a part-time governor, it sort of by default, the legislature became much more full-time than it is supposed to be. So he let the people of West Virginia down doing that. Now, back to Joe's accusations. I think everyone is true. And John Gilstrap, if you are right, and I'm not saying you're not, but if you are, I think we may end up about a year from now with West Virginia's version of Robert Menendez sitting in the United States Senate.
Oh, my. That's an interesting accusation, Mr. Doyle. You think this will reach criminal activity?
Oh, as Mike Carl just said, it already has.
Do you think there's a possibility that and if that happens, let me go this way, if that happens and Justice leaves office, then doesn't the governor then appoint the senator to fill the term? So then you'd have a Republican governor filling a Republican term. So therefore, rather than
if there's a Republican governor.
Okay. But assuming that things go the way it would appear. So as a larger plan, that's
and that appointment would only be for up until the next election,
which would be 6 years, right?
No.
The next general election.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if he's in there and he leaves in 6 months, you would appoint the governor would appoint someone for a year and a half, and then you have another election.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to you, Joe.
Well, a couple points. Mike Carl is correct. There's personal liability on the sales tax money. There's also personal liability under the West Virginia Wage Payment Collection Act and under federal law for the failure to remit that health insurance money that was withheld from employees' paychecks. So he's looking at the potential here. And we don't know enough about the cases to say one way or the other right now, but he's looking at the potential here for criminal culpability with regard to those monies that are unaccounted for as of this date. Look, we have short memories in West Virginia regarding some of our politics. It wasn't that long ago that Senator Blair and Senator Tarr wanted to run Justice out of Charleston on a set of rails because, as John Doyle said, he was AWOL when it came to doing the job. That was what the whole issue with the residency question was about. He wasn't in Charleston. He wouldn't show up. And it's in our Constitution that the governor has to sit at the seat of power. Yet this guy thumbed his nose at the Constitution, thumbed his nose, in essence, at West Virginians, and said, I'm not going to do that. So at some point, you just have to question, going back to my original query here, how much can we tolerate of this guy? And the other point I would make is that this is one of the problems that we're going to face in West Virginia, and you can see it in other states too. In one-party rule, and I don't care if it's ruled by Democrats or Republicans, in a state with one-party rule, there really isn't a viable opposition to come forward and take on somebody like a Jim Justice. Mr. Elliott up in Wheeling, by all accounts, is a good guy. He doesn't have the money or the backing to go after this guy for this Senate seat. He doesn't have the ability to raise these issues and get coverage on them so that maybe some West Virginians will sit back and take notice and say, geez, is this guy more than just a pet dog running around the state in the dog and pony show? Is there more to this that we really need to look at? You're never going to have that debate. And that's unfortunate, but that's one of the byproducts of one-party rule, is that you deal with the person that one party puts up for office. Well, and unfortunately, this guy's on a glide path to Washington, D.C., and I have to believe, as serious and as respected as a senator is, as Shelley Moore Capito, she has to be turning pale at the thought of having to work with this guy on behalf of West Virginia issues. I don't know that for a fact, but I just have to imagine that this is not going to be very comfortable for Shelley going forward. So, but this is what we've got, and it's a shame, but I'm fearful that this is going to be an embarrassment long-term for the state.
Joe, you said we have short memories. It was not long ago that we had 2 or 3 Supreme Court justices impeached for actions that are obviously not identical, but in some regards very similar. Is there a difference between what we saw at the Supreme Court actions and what we're seeing with justice?
Boy, good question, Bill. You know, Rad, let's go back to that. Remember the $32,000 sofa that was in one of the justices' offices, and another justice had this beautiful inlaid floor with the outline of West Virginia. There was profligate spending, sure, to the tunes of tens of thousands of dollars, and those justices were run out of office.
And when we say justice there, we're talking Supreme Court justices, by the way, not members of the Jim Justice family.
That's right. 3 justices were impeached by our Senate over profligate spending. In this particular case, where you have employee money being taken and not accounted for, and when you have money that should be remitted to the state, it should never go in any business account. That money should be segregated and sent to the state automatically when you collect sales tax revenue, unaccounted for. Those liens, those tax liens, have been pending for months without an explanation or without any action by the state tax department. That's something that must make Carl blanch. Yeah, Bill, it's a very apt question, I think, as to how you can lose your office in this state in one fell swoop. But here we got a governor who just thumbs his nose at us and is riding off to the U.S. Senate.
John Doyle.
Somebody who is better at arithmetic than I needs to figure out how many Alan Lockery couches Jim Justice has taken from the taxpayers of West Virginia by not paying the sales tax he's supposed to pay, and how many Alan Lockery couches he has taken from the employees of the Greenbrier by not paying their health care premiums.
Well, $73.2 million couches would get you to $2.1 million, that's for sure. So the question...
I said someone who's better at arithmetic than I.
Well, here I am. So anyway, so the question I have then, and we have 3.5 minutes left, whose job is it in the state to look into these violations of the tax law and enforce those? Because the Morrissey office released a statement that said they have limited jurisdiction in cases like these.
Actually, it is not the Ethics Commission, unfortunately. We have designed statutorily an Ethics Commission with no teeth. That was the intention to begin with. All the Ethics Commission does is look at things and advise people.
Well, then whose job is it?
Whose job is, John?
The county prosecutor.
Of Greenbrier County.
Yes. in the case of the Greenbrier. And in the case, I think, of sales tax, it would be the county prosecutor, Mark of Kanawha County. Is that right?
Yeah. I agree.
But Joe said that there are federal laws that have been broken here too,
Mm-hmm.
and Merrick Garland has not shown any hesitancy about indicting people or charging people with crimes. So if crimes have been committed, why have crimes not been charged?
Yeah, good question for the U.S. attorneys in the Southern District and the Northern District.
There was a question in one of the releases I read. There was a question about the prosecutor for Raleigh County Commission requests. This is a statement from the Justice Companies. Raleigh County Commission requests investigation into allegations against prosecuting attorney Ben Hatfield. The auction was originally scheduled August 27th. This most recent announcement regarding the potential sale of the Greenbrier Hotel comes after a motion for preliminary injunction in the upcoming auction was filed in court on Monday, August 19th. Does anybody know anything about that? This is a statement
I don't.
I don't know anything more about this
No.
than that. And this is the first time I've heard about anything regarding Ben Hatfield as the prosecuting attorney. And I don't know how Raleigh County figures into this either.
No, that's not Greenbrier County. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, and the political downside of justice going to the U.S. Senate is that you have to physically be in the chamber to vote as a U.S. senator, and you can't transmit it in electronically or and his work habits suggest that he's not going to be there.
Well, but that aside, ultimately, when you're dealing with the violations that have taken place here, it's common sense would dictate that something serious needs to follow. It can't just be, okay, well, get around to paying it.
No, I agree. He ought to be prosecuted all over the place.
So it's the job of the Greenbrier County prosecuting attorney?
That's one. Yeah,
and it's federal level, it's a federal situation.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, gentlemen, I appreciate it. Joe, good start to the program. No comment, Joe?
Well, I'm still just worked up.
All right. I could tell. Good stuff. Bill, you're on the clock. Coming up next.
Rob, the conventions are finished. The debate will come in early September. There's election, obviously, on November the 5th. There's going to be a lot of puts and takes in the next couple of 3 months that will influence or could influence the election. One of which it will probably be today. And Robert Kennedy Jr. Is saying that he is going to probably withdraw from the race and is going to throw his backings toward Donald Trump. A little background on this. Kennedy went in, got in the race over the objections of his family. They felt that he was not qualified to enter. He's very progressive in a lot of his views, which appeals to the left. But he's also vaccination, which endears himself to a lot on the right. When he first entered the race, he was growing something like 17 to 18% poll numbers, and he stayed fairly constant with that until Joe Biden stepped out of the race, and then his poll numbers dropped around 4 to 6%. Prior to Biden stepping out of the race, there was some question: was he growing more from the Republicans or from the Democrats? After Biden stepped out of the race, it appeared to be that the folks that were negative to Biden but favorably disposed toward Harris withdrew from RFK Jr. and supported Harris. So now his numbers are down to 5 to 6%. If the rumors have what we hear on the press, RFK Jr. has been shopping his votes or his influence to both parties. He went to Harris and tried to lobby for a position in the cabinet or some senior position. The Harris group supposedly said no thank you. He also shopped to Trump. Trump did just the opposite. Trump said we feel that he could be an advantage, said he would he admires RFK Jr. and he would be willing to seriously consider putting him on the cabinet. My question now is to my colleagues: will RFK Jr. getting out of the race endorsing Trump have any influence along the race?
Mr. Gilstrap.
Potentially, obviously, but in preparing for this answer, I'm doing some research. Apparently, Donald Trump Jr., has floated the idea of RFK Jr. being put in charge of the CIA. Now, I don't know if that was a joke, but he actually put that out there. And at least we'll know who shot his dad and his uncle.
We know who it is, and the guy's dead.
So, anyway, at this point, it's a numbers game. And with the race being as tight as it is, we won't know about the Kamala bump for quite some time. And the real campaign hasn't started yet. She hasn't yet done a press conference. So the next, 90 days, whatever's left in the campaign, excuse me, this is going to be a very, very close race. So an extra 4, 5, 6%, 3% can make all the difference in the world. I don't know what I know of RFK Jr.'s stances on things. There's a lot of crazy there. A percentage point's a percentage point. So yeah, it absolutely can have an impact on winning and losing. I'm not sure it will have a big impact on policy. Although RFK Jr. in charge of the defense of the CIA would be very entertaining.
Mr. Ferretti.
So the guy who has campaigned and raised the following issues: the fact that his doctor told him he had a brain worm, that he's raised questions about the origins of 9/11, has shown an inability to raise any money and get on all 50 ballots nationwide. He admitted to picking up roadkill, storing it in the trunk of his car, and then dumping it in Central Park.
After putting his hand in his mouth.
Yeah, he has advocated for withholding all federal education money to any school that provides childhood vaccines. He has indicated that he believes COVID-19 was designed to attack Caucasians and black people. This is the guy who is now looking for a job with one of the future administrations. My point would be any administration that would invite him in should be considered disqualified. This guy is a lost soul. His family will tell you that. And he has no business being near any government job. So I hope that any administration that would even entertain the idea of bringing him in would have a second thought.
Joe, the way you set that up at the beginning kind of reminded me of that old crusty police chief in Beverly Hills Cop. Is this the man who lured detectives Rosewood and Taggart to a strip club? Who disabled a police vehicle with a banana? Who ruined the buffet at the Herald Club? Is this the man? I expect a Harold Faltermeyer theme to start at any point along the way here. Mr. Carl.
Rob.
Well, keep in mind that he had a base of, small, but a base of support, and it's dwindling, no question, based on the polls. But I'm shocked, given my lack of respect for the Democratic Party and Harris particularly, why they wouldn't make some kind of a deal with him, because of this, at least the small base of support he has. So that's pretty surprising to me, but I just don't understand it. Maybe they're worse off than I thought, but Trump will work something out.
Mr. Doyle.
They didn't make a deal with him because they got better sense than that. Whoever makes the deal is going to backfire on him, I think. Just on the numbers, you would think it would be a 1% jump for Trump, because I think based on what the admiral said is that Of that 5% that he has right now, approximately 5%, I think 3% would go to Trump and 2% would go to Harris. So that's a net gain of 1% for Trump initially. But I think a deal like this gives the other side so many things to poke at to embarrass the person who made the deal.
Yeah, going back to some numbers, the recent poll in Pennsylvania has, let me get my numbers, Harris at 46%, Trump at 45%, Kennedy at 5%. So if all the Kennedy votes went to Trump, then it would be a overwhelming influence. No one believes though that all of them will go one side or the other. But I think it was a numbers game, but it's very, very, very early in the process. I think John Doyle's raising a good point that by getting Kennedy on board, brings in some initial numbers. It's going to be subject the campaign to criticism because a lot of the conservatives do not like the progressive platform that RFK Jr. has been presenting. So.
The shopping of his supporters was basically along the lines of put me in your cabinet and you'll have my supporters.
Exactly.
You'll get the votes. So if I'm a supporter of RFK, I'm a supporter of him because I don't like Trump and I don't like whatever the Democratic option was. So, and I also don't have any guarantee that he's going to be in the cabinet. So am I automatically, just because he says, oh, we're all voting for Trump now? I mean, would that really influence me to vote for Trump if I didn't want to vote for Trump, or Harris if I didn't want to vote for Harris, just because one of them said, yeah, I'll put you in my cabinet? Sure.
Yeah, I think maybe what happened, Rob, that group that was did not like either one and was kind of leaning toward the Democrats, they left the RFK
and went to
camp,
Harris already.
went to Harris already. So that's the 4 or 5% that we're seeing with RFK Jr. now are predominantly Trump-leaning folks.
Joking aside, RFK Jr. put out a video. I sent it to, I don't know if I sent it to all of you or just a few of you. It's about a 20-minute video on YouTube.
I only got a dog video from you this week.
It wasn't that one. It's not the talking dog video.
I thought they were playing poker. Never mind.
It's RFK's vision of America, and it is a very compelling video about the problems. It's sort of a Morning in America kind of message, and it's about dismantling. He doesn't use the word the swamp, but it's an anti-swamp kind of message. It's a very compelling message. Compelling enough that it drove me to go and look at his website, and that's where I discovered the crazy, and about the dismantling of the military and the anti-vaxxing stuff and all of that. But his surface message, his compelling message, was really very engaging. So there's not but not all voters are going to take the second step. Uh-huh. So if in fact what you're doing by bringing onto the campaign, you get if Trump gets the compelling speaker, but doesn't adopt the crazy policies, and I don't know if he's going to get a position on the cabinet or not. Certainly not CIA, but it's not necessarily a net negative. If you get a good communicator who can do that Morning in America kind of presentation, that can very well help.
The answer to your question, Rob, is he can't deliver the votes. They will make up their own minds.
Sure,
these people who are telling pollsters that they're for RFK, and I think it's 60-40, maybe as much as 2-1. I do think some of them will not vote at all. I don't know how high a percentage that is, but there is a certain portion of them that simply will not vote at all. But many more of that remainder will go to Trump than will go to Harris.
In times when I have not supported the major party candidates who are up for election, there has been nothing that they have been able, the person I supported as a third party or whatever, there's been nothing that they've been able to say to me to convince me to throw my support to their recommendation of the major two parties. If I was supporting a third party candidate, whether it was in a primary or whatever, it was because I wasn't happy with the people that were at the top of the tickets. It wasn't because I wanted to see them recruited and have their ideas endorsed by somebody at the top of the ticket.
But keep in mind that he got in the race when Biden was at the top of the Democratic ticket.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a fair point.
Yeah.
All right. Unless you had a final thought, Bill, we move on to issue number 3.
No, that's fine. Thank
Mr.
you.
Gilstrap.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about vice presidential candidate Tim Walz and this whole business, the so-called stolen valor argument, and I want to get to that also. During my fire service years, I had all of the training that anybody could get. You know, I was Fire Officer 4. I was, you know, for the internet. The IFSTA was the certifying agency. All the training that was necessary to be a fire chief, but I never called myself chief because I was never a chief. I only got as far as a lieutenant. Anybody who goes in the military, you go to the War College, you do all of that training, and the an 06 a colonel has pretty much all the training to be a general, but he doesn't call himself a general because he's not a general. So here we have the circumstance where Tim Walz, Governor Walz, called himself a command sergeant major when he wasn't one. And he ended up retiring as a master sergeant, which is an entirely different grade. It's an E8 versus an E9. And there's other things that come with the nature of that duty. It's an entirely different job. One, it's certainly a more glorious title. It can be, not to go into the details of what the different jobs are, but they are entirely different jobs. And when you combine that with, and I don't think that's necessarily stolen valor. I think that's the wrong term. I think it's an issue of being not truthful to the public. And when you combine that with these rumblings from his former co-workers, soldiers, I guess, where apparently he left the service right before going into a combat assignment, which he had done his time apparently, and he retired. I actually don't hold that against him. But it seems to me that there's a great opportunity for the GOP to spin this into something really pretty awful. So the question of the panel is this the swift boat moment for Walz?
The stolen valor part I thought had to do with him talking, the quote about carrying a rifle in battle or something to that effect.
In war. He said the phrase in war.
In war,
and he
yeah.
and he later acknowledged he had misspoken,
Right.
and he corrected that.
The other officer part is the exaggeration, not necessarily the
Okay.
stolen valor that
Right.
when they
Yeah.
separate.
Because I
the
think
two.
that was a
And
specious
actually,
argument, too.
stolen valor specifically
John, why don't you
applied-
just go ahead and go on this one first?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
The stolen valor actually applies to someone who claims to have earned a medal that he or she did not, or have been awarded a medal that he or she was not awarded. You don't earn a medal; you're
Right.
awarded a medal. And John Gilstrap, you made a couple of mistakes there.
Okay.
First of all, he was never a master sergeant; he was a sergeant major.
No, he's a master sergeant. Is what he retired as an E8. That's what he is.
Yeah,
now.
which is a sergeant major in the Army.
No, sergeant major is an E9.
No, command sergeant major is an E9.
No, master sergeant. I looked this up yesterday.
Well, and I'm looking it up right now. John's right.
Okay, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
That was easy. Thank you,
But
Admiral.
he went as command sergeant major. Is what? Is what
Yes,
he
that's
was.
right. And in fact, he was command sergeant major at the time because he wore the rank, he drew the pay, and he did the job. Now, the rules are, if you're going to be permanent at it, you have to finish this schooling. And had he stayed in long enough, he would have. Now, let's say he had done the schooling and not passed the exam. He would have been busted back to sergeant major. But during the time that he did that, he was a command sergeant major. So he did rise to the rank of command sergeant major. And I'm going to show you a little something here in my little wallet, which is sort of similar. I was a first lieutenant. I was commissioned as second lieutenant from officer candidate school. I went to Vietnam. I led my platoon, and while there, I was promoted to first lieutenant. And when I left, and I wore the silver bar. I was paid as a first lieutenant, and when I left the Army, I was busted back to second lieutenant, and that's what it says on my draft card thing here, 2LT. But while I was in, I was a first lieutenant. I did the job, and that's what I was. And he was, for the last time he was on active duty, a command sergeant major.
Why do you get busted back after you?
It's just the way they do things. It's just, yeah. It's,
But busted back's not the right word. Reverting.
yeah,
However,
that's right. Yeah, busted back as if you did something wrong. Yeah.
And
Master Sergeant is
Sergeant Major.
no, he retired.
E8.
Is
In the Army, it is a sergeant major. As the Brits say, Saw Major.
Sergeant Major
Yes.
is an E9.
No, it's an
He
E8.
just pulled it up.
And he told you I was right.
I know, and then I showed him how to do it, and then it came up. He pushed the wrong button. So
No. That's why I was in the Navy. But I'm seeing two different things on my iPad.
there's still 3 up and 3 down.
There's 3 up, but it does show that Sergeant Major E9.
End of an inning. Yeah.
And First Sergeant is an E8.
And a Master Sergeant and First Sergeant are the same thing. They're both E8s.
Okay.
All right, now to Michael Carl on this as we battle in the war of words here.
Well, as E5, I never got close to to those ranks, so I don't have anything to add to that. But the truth is, and all this detail about E8, E9, he is an absolute liar. And this man, this was just one example. We can debate about the details, but he is a typical liar who exaggerates good things about himself and his career, and that's just there's no question about it.
Well, there is question about it because John disagrees.
No, there's no.
Yeah,
He's not a liar.
John disagrees.
He's not a liar.
No, he's
you
not.
can argue about this thing about E8, E9 and then what its label is, but he is an absolute liar.
Not true.
He said he was in combat. He was not in combat.
And he acknowledged
he
that.
lied about that.
Well, he misspoke. There's a
He will misspeak and lie until somebody confronts him with the truth.
Well,
and that's what he's all about.
I have misspoken on occasion. People have called me. I said, "Okay, I'm sorry, I was wrong." Now, and back to let's forget Master and Sergeant. I remember when I was in, you had a first sergeant. The company had a first sergeant, which was an E8. Then the battalion had a battalion sergeant major, and the brigade had a brigade sergeant major. Maybe they've changed the term since then. I thought Master Sergeant was in the Air Force. The biggest guy in the Air Force enlisted is called the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. The highest ranking enlisted person in the Army is the Sergeant Major of the Army. Let's go back to E8 and E9. The fact is he was promoted to E9, and he acted as an E9, was paid as an E9 until the time he retired because he had not completed the coursework. He then retired, was reverted back to E8.
Hey, Mr. Ferretti, I've got 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, back to John Gilstrap's original question, what impact this is all going to have. I mean, it's messy for Tim Walz, but I think it's thin soup. John Doyle explained it as I understand it. He achieved that rank, and when he went to retire, because he didn't complete coursework, he reverted back to his previous rank. And so, is he truthful in saying I was an E9 versus an E8? Well, I think you can argue that's truthful to an extent, but he didn't retire that way, so he can't claim that currently. I think it's thin soup. The issue with whether or not he carried his weapon in war, or if he was assigned to Italy, where he was during the Afghan war, and vast majority of service people don't actually go to the war theater. They're stationed elsewhere across the globe, and that's where he was. If we're going to get into debates about the extent you were in war and how many times you fired your weapon or where'd you carry it and all that, that's good stuff for people on TV to debate. But I think bottom line is, there's probably more important issues to talk about as these people try to differentiate themselves from each other, and the debate between Vance and Walz and who's going to be the better vice president. Just 2 weeks ago, we said no one votes for the vice president. So I think it's, in the long run, it's not going to amount to a whole lot.
During times of war, a case could be made, and even not, that American soldiers are a target anywhere on the globe. Mr. Gilstrap, you have 30 seconds to wrap it up.
The point here is less about the absolute value of whether or not this is important. The point is more about, is this a weapon to be used in the campaigning? And I think this is a very potent weapon to be used in the campaigning, certainly among the military ranks, because it varies. It's a variation from the truth that I think is very damaging and can be played as a very damaging thing.
Yeah, I was skipped over, so I did not.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill. Well, you have 15 seconds.
Yeah, all I did, Sergeant Major, both of them are E9s, Sergeant Major and that, Command Sergeant Major. I do not think it's going to be an issue because I don't think there's any credibility to it. I think that the fact that he reverted to it is not a big thing, happened to many. I don't think it's going to be an issue at all.
I just find it amusing that any Trump administration would have an issue with someone lying or telling him his truth.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Yeah. So, anyway, we head to the break. We come back. John Doyle, you are on the clock, sir. And with issue number 4, Mr. John Doyle.
Approximately a year ago, and I'm going on memory here, West Virginia American Water, which is a German-owned company that does a lot of that serves does water and sewer for a lot of communities in West Virginia, made their first foray up here into the Eastern Panhandle by purchasing Jefferson Utilities, which was a company that owned about a dozen very small water systems and sewer systems for very small unincorporated communities. There was a lot of opposition to them coming up here for that, and part of the reason was a suspicion that the only reason they wanted to come was to position themselves to begin taking over the public water systems up here. The Charlestown Utility Board, Shepherdstown Waterworks, the Harpers Ferry Bolivar Public Water System, Martinsburg, and maybe the Berkeley County Public Service District. I'm not sure about all that. I think the Admiral knows a little bit more about than I knows a little bit more about than I do. But at any rate, they paid $27 million for those utilities when they came up here. The staff of the Public Service Commission said that was way, way high. They were paying almost twice as much as they should be paying. And the consumer advocate for the PSC said the same thing. The PSC let them pay that exorbitant price anyway. And to me, that is the only reason they'd be willing to pay that exorbitant price, is to put them in a position to begin taking over public water systems here by telling communities, hey, we can take this headache away from you. We can run it. You don't have to worry about it, and that sort of thing. And I have two problems with that. One is that if you have a public water system, if something goes wrong, you at least have an elected official you can complain to. And also, I was in Charleston during the big chemical spill. I was a week into my 3 years as Deputy Secretary of Revenue. I'd moved into my apartment down there. They had that chemical spill that poisoned the water for 300,000 people. And I thought I was fortunate in that I was among the first apartments to be told, we're clear. Here's the system by which you clean your pipes out. I did it to the letter. The next day I got sick as a dog, and a week later they said, oh, we told you all the wrong way to clean your pipes out. So the folks that came later, not all of the ones that were toward the tail end were given the right way in the first place. So anyway, that's the opinion I have of West Virginia American Water. And this past week, West Virginia American, well, actually 2 weeks ago, had a private meeting with the mayor of Charlestown. And the city manager of Charlestown was not allowed in the meeting, even though the city manager of Charlestown is the liaison between the city council and the Charlestown Utility Board. Well, and after that, West Virginia American announced that they were going to offer to take over the sewer system, not the water system, but the sewer system. This past week, the Charlestown Utility Board voted them down. I think it was unanimous. If it wasn't, it was overwhelming. And many of the council members said, we don't want West Virginia American Water here, and I applaud them. So I wanted to throw that out for the group to discuss. And if there are any questions you all have that I didn't answer, please ask, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Well, what is the question?
The question is, what will this do? This decision by the Charlestown Utility Board, due to West Virginia American Water's desire, what I'm convinced is their desire, to take over all of the public water systems in the Eastern Panhandle. Oh, one more thing. Every time they've taken over a system, they've immediately gone to the Public Service Commission for a rate increase, even if in the case of Jefferson Utilities, they had already been given a rate increase because of improvements they had supposedly made. And so that supposedly should have been clear, but now West Virginia American Water gets another increase on top of that for the same kind of improvements that were supposed to have been made. So anyway, the question is, has Charlestown Utility Board at least postponed the day that West Virginia American Water will take over other public water systems in the Eastern Panhandle?
Bill, as former president of the Berkeley County Commission, you seem to have some experience here.
Yeah, the answer, John, is no, because each party, each utility, each entity is going to make that decision itself. They've been approaching, this is not new. They tried to come into Berkeley County back in the early 2000s. They recently, at the same time they had discussions in Jefferson County, they were prepared to give the county commission, Berkeley County, a sweetheart deal, a lot of money to do this. And the county commission in Berkeley County said, we're not going to do this. You're giving us money. It's going to fall upon the back of the taxpayer. West Virginia Water has a long-standing reputation of being one of the most expensive water providers in the state. So, no, I don't think whatever Charleston Utilities does is going to make a nickel's worth of difference in Berkeley County, because Berkeley County historically, and I think they'll continue to say, we do not want you into Berkeley County.
Was it Charleston or Charlestown?
Charlestown.
Charlestown.
Yeah.
The Charlestown Utility Board actually runs water and sewer for Charlestown, Ranson, and a whole lot of the unincorporated area right around there. It probably has close to 50% of the population of Jefferson County.
Joe Ferretti?
Well, I don't know a whole lot about the subject. I think the game here is for a company like West Virginia American Water to come in and take over some of these smaller public utilities. And the first thing they do is then they run to the state and say, oh, my gosh, all the systems are antiquated. We need to update that, and we need rate increases. And that seems to be the game they play. And then they get those rate increases, and they do some infrastructure improvement. But then those rate increases stick. And they get a premium for their water, and my kudos to the folks who voted them down, and I'm glad to hear Bill say that it doesn't look like the welcome mat's going to be out in Berkeley County. That's a good thing. I can tell you, West Virginians should be very happy that their water is regulated utility, because in Georgia, we're home. Believe it or not, water is not regulated. We are subject to a private water company that provides water to my home and my development, and people routinely have water bills of $300 to $400 a month. Now they're crying down there for regulation, and they're running to the state and say, "Please regulate this utility." But so far, the state government has shown no interest in it. Thank goodness Virginia has regulations in place, because we would be as much as those poor folks.
Joe, you're breaking up a little bit wherever you moved to in your place in Pocahontas County.
Okay.
Yeah. Mike Carl?
Well, our firm represents, among others, the city of Martinsburg, and they have an interest in these issues as well. But it sounds like there could be some litigation, so I don't want to say anything that would prejudice whatever prospects our firm may have get involved in that litigation.
Mr. Gilstrap.
I kind of don't understand the issue, particularly with who's currently running the sewer system.
Charlestown Utility Board.
And the Charlestown Utility Board, do they subcontract it out, or do they themselves have the expertise to run wastewater treatment plants?
The city would make the decision. The Charlestown City Council would ultimately make the decision. Do we sell the Charlestown Utility Board to West Virginia American Water?
Why would somebody want to do that?
Because, and this has happened in a number of small communities around West Virginia American Water has been able to persuade them all of this time that you put in to providing water and sewer to your customers, we can take it off your hands. It's all this headache. You don't have to worry about it. And there are a number of particularly small towns in West Virginia that have said, let's do that. It's the old let Joe do it, or let George do it.
An important point that Joe Ferretti alluded to is a lot of these small utilities have decaying infrastructure that needs a lot of money. So when West Virginia American Water comes in, they will upgrade the facilities, the infrastructure, but they charge it, they spread it out to every ratepayer throughout the state. So that was one of the attractions for Jefferson County to get their infrastructure built up. Folks in southern part of the state are paying for it in part. The same thing will hold true with American Water picks up a utility in a different part of the state. Jefferson County ratepayers will help pay for those upgrades.
That's right.
Well, that being the case, it sounds like it's a waiting game.
Well, that's what West Virginia American Water thinks. I believe that's what they think, that if they just hang on long enough, and I think now that I understand the rejection in Berkeley County, that may be part of the reason they wanted to take over Jefferson Utilities, so they'd actually physically be up here and maybe be in a better chance to persuade Berkeley County or the city of Martinsburg or the town of Harpers Ferry, which runs the system for Harpers Ferry and Bolivar, or the town of Shepherdstown or Charlestown Utility Board. And it's interesting, Joe, you mentioned about Georgia and not being regulated. West Virginia is regulated, but we have something like about the top 3 or 4 highest water rates in the country. And I think a lot of it is because much of what are called public water systems have been contracted out to West Virginia American Water.
We don't have anything close to $300 or $400.
No,
Joe
that's
already
true.
Just mentioned.
Yeah, that's true. But I said in the top 3 or 4 in the country. That's
well, I'm not sure our $30, $40 a month would fall in that category, John.
Every comparison I've seen, and this is statewide now. This isn't necessarily what you're paying or what I'm paying. I'm paying about $55 a month to the Shepherdstown Water Works. I'm happy with that, but I'm afraid that if West Virginia American Water were to take it over, they would go to the Public Service Commission and have those rates increased. And Shepherdstown, not too long ago, got a grant to do a total revamping of the water system and that is true of much of the Eastern Panhandle, to the point where in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, there are only 2 of the jurisdictions that are up to the standards for the Chesapeake Bay, and that's West Virginia and the District of Columbia. Maryland is not, Pennsylvania is not, Delaware, Virginia, New York, none of those have gotten there, but about 10 years ago, West Virginia did. So I think that much of the infrastructure here is probably in pretty good shape. I do think what we have is a public service commission, and 2 of these people are friends of mine. They're honest people, but I just think they have the mentality that in any fight between a supposedly regulated utility and the consumer, the utility must be right.
And now we go to issue number 5, and for that, Mr. Michael Carl.
Okay, this is a question to everybody. Do you agree that to have any chance in the presidential election, Kamala Harris has to either hide or even lie about her ultra-liberal public record?
She does not have an ultra-liberal public record.
I guess John Doyle's going first. Go ahead, John.
I apologize.
Go right ahead. You're doing fine. You're doing fine.
She does not have an ultra-liberal public record. When she ran for president 5 years ago, she did position herself there in the Democratic primaries, as did a number of others. But her record as a U.S. senator is actually, while it's left of center, I don't think you can legitimately call it far left. And as Attorney General of California, she has a very strong pro-law enforcement record. So I think when you put that all together, no, she does not have to lie about her record.
You had to lie about her record to answer that question that way.
Everything I said was factual.
It was a lie.
Mr. Stubblefield.
Mike, you've used the term lie quite frequently today. Everybody, the vice president nominee lies, the president nominee lies. I'm not sure there's any truth at all on the Democratic side. I don't know if issues are going to be is going to be a major consideration in this race. We'd like to say it was, but the Democrats have been targeting a different demographics than what has been targeted in the past. They're targeting different demographics than the Republicans are. I think likability and relatability are going to be considerations that will play a much larger role in this coming election than they have in times past.
Mr. Gilstrap.
The far left is going to vote for Kamala. The far right is going to vote for Donald Trump. So now we have to go for the middle ground, and the middle ground is going to be paying attention to the issues, and the issues are that she is far to the left of center, and she's far to the left of center on guns, on energy, on the economy, on the border, on jobs, on all of the issues that are plaguing America right now. She and her party have been in charge for 12 of the last 16 years, and she can't run to that. She has to run from that. So in order to run from it, yes, they have to obfuscate better instead of lying, covering up, shading. But no, she can't embrace what she has done in the past. She can't embrace what her fingerprints are on in the past. She has to pretend that she's something she's not.
But, John, the economy, by all numbers, the economy is better than it was.
The stock market is better than it was.
No. But if you look at the other parameters,
You're about to lie.
Well, we're short on time, but we have this discussion like every Monday with Phil. I fundamentally disagree with how we judge the economy.
There's numbers that we can...
Right.
Joe Ferretti.
Well, I think with regard to how she represents herself and what her record is, I'm fascinated to see how this very abbreviated presidential campaign works its way out. We're down to less than 75 days. And in a country where people run for president for 2 years. I mean, let's remember Donald Trump announced, in the beginning of 2023 that he was running? Now we've got a candidate stepping up just 4 weeks ago. So I'm fascinated to see how this is going to work out. I think it's a two-edged sword for her. One, I think it's going to be to her advantage that it's only less than 75 days because a lot of people who are intent on defining her for her are not going to have that ability to do so because of the lack of time. Yet I think it's also going to be detrimental to her as she tries to get out there and define herself because there's not a lot of time. So I think that it's going to be interesting to see how this ultimately turns out in this abbreviated campaign. And I wonder whether after this election in November, if we're going to rethink how these campaigns operate and if it's not better to have a more abbreviated system like they have in Europe where they turn around and have elections in a matter of weeks, national elections in weeks versus years. We might all be benefiting from that if that would be the case.
Go ahead, John Doyle.
John Gilstrap, Kamala Harris is not far left on the border. She supported the Lankford bill, which is about 80% conservative and 20% liberal. So anybody that supports that is not far left on the border. She's dead center on the border.
That bill was a campaign stunt.
Yes, she had her
Oh,
back.
and that's why Lankford participated in it?
Okay. She'd had her back turned for 3 years to the border. She didn't visit the border. She pretended the border didn't exist. It was a campaign stunt. They said that the border was sealed. They obfuscated. We don't like lie. We obfuscated that the border was sealed, that it has been a nightmare. That was truly a stunt. And they have also lost control of thousands of children and also known terror watch list people that are wandering our country through that border. She's in trouble on the border. She's in deep trouble on the border.
But they painted her as the border czar. That she was never labeled a border.
Oh, come
she
on!
was not.
God,
She
you're
was
drinking
no,
the
she
Kool-Aid.
wasn't.
You find it where you find it. I spent an hour last night trying to find it where it was. It was something that was generated, a label given to her. It was not used, but
Given to her by the liberal media.
given. I don't know.
Which isn't so liberal.
Yeah.
Finish your thought, Bill.
No. It was a label that was given to her that was not given to her by the administration. It's given to her by, I don't know whether it started with the media or the Republicans or who. But
in all fairness, we don't have true imperial inherited titles here like Tsar and Tsarina and Tsarevich. But she was put in charge of
what?
border.
Of what aspect? No, only one aspect.
That was
long term looking at how to solve the problem, John. She was not
She didn't
looking at
visit it, Bill.
Well,
She wasn't supposed to.
She was not. That was not a job, John. She was trying to get an agreement between Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador of reducing the number of folks coming over, and that worked. That part worked.
And
That's
meanwhile, they're persecuting people on horseback for whipping
that was not her
Haitians when that's
responsibility, though, John.
It's the administration. She's part of the administration. She's number two in the administration.
How much influence did Vance have? Excuse me,
Mike Pence.
Mike Pence have with
Mike
Trump?
Pence never ran for president.
But Mike, you're saying
Yeah, he did.
Harris had a job.
Well, not really.
Yes, he did, John. Come on.
Final
come on.
thoughts. Get them together. You get 8 seconds apiece while Stubblefield and Gilstrap hash it out during the commercial break. Final thoughts. We start with you, Joe Ferretti.
After watching both parties' conventions, boy, am I really hungry for high school football.
Mr. Gilstrap.
After a taste of autumn, I'm ready for the real thing.
Mr. Stubblefield.
One of the contributors said, "Strong finish. You should have listened to us off air."
Mr. Carl.
Cards took 2 and 3 from the Brewers. Now we're only 10 games behind them.
Mr. Doyle.
Unfortunately, we got summer back next week, 95 degrees for 2 or 3 days.
The 4 Mountaineer tickets at this point look like they're going to Maria Lawrenson with a $1,250 bid. All the money goes to the backpack program in Berkeley County. Nice job, folks. Dave Ramsey Show's next. This is Talk Radio, WRNR Martinsburg and TV 10. We'll talk to you again in 70. Short out.